If you're really serious about growing your business, you should be serious about getting a mentor. You should be serious about getting in a peer group that doesn't think you're crazy, that does believe in you, and that understands what you're going through. And
all right, welcome back to another Ecom Life episode. Today we're flipping it around a little bit again, and I'm going to do an interview with Brian so that everybody can get to know him a little bit better.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Awesome. So I'm Lindy, and
I'm Brian.
And we'll just get into it. So, Brian, I feel like everyone knows a lot about you now that you've started Quadra, and they probably know a little bit about your background as a laser engraver. But would you tell us maybe about your childhood and growing up?
Yeah. So I actually have I would say it's unique. It's different. So my parents adopted 5 of us from birth. So I was adopted, and 4 of my siblings were adopted, and then they had 2 others, and they had all of us within a 2-year time frame, and we were all boys. So my parents So my parents had 6 of us, all under the age of 2. At the same time.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like double, triple strollers everywhere they went and stuff. And we grew up, we were the baseball team, we were the basketball team, we did everything together. We were all in the same grades. It was really weird. So we're all the same age.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So it's interesting. So I have 6 brothers, no sisters. We're all very, very close in age, and all of us still live in Utah. So that's kind of weird. No one ever moved out of Utah.
That's cool, though. Probably nice to be next to family.
Yeah.
In high school, after you graduated, what was your path after that?
So I actually started looking into going into the Army while I was in high school. And so right after I got out of high school, I joined the Army. And I also served a mission for my church for 2 years. I went to Guatemala for 2 years. So before I did college or anything, I did that. And so I did military and a mission, because here in Utah it's 8 years of, so I was in the National Guard, so it's 8 years of National Guard service.
Yeah. And
that's what the contract is. And then in there you have 2 years of, they call it like ready reserve, I guess, so they allow you to go on a mission if you want to or whatever. And so I chose to do that right after basic training and my job school. I went on a mission to Guatemala, came home, went back into the service, and I did that while starting to go to school. I mean, I know you got more questions, but I can go further into this. So I started going, I was in the military, doing the Army. When I got home from my mission, I was started going to school. I was also got married, started a family, and then I decided I hated college. And I'm not saying that if you're going to college, don't go to college. I think everybody has a different story, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has a different path in life, and we can all choose what path we want to go. And for me, college was not something that was on my top priority. I was also starting a business on the side. I first started a business, and I called it Cover Up's Leather Company. That's
a good name.
So crazy. But on my mission, there was a guy who would make these Bible covers for the missionaries, and he would engrave on them with hand engraver. They were beautiful, they were I can't call them paintings, but engravings, and it was pictures of Christ and all these really cool these
Would
cool
he do it
paintings.
by hand?
He'd do it by hand with a hand burner, the little leather burners.
Yeah.
And they were amazing, and so it made me think, man, I think that'd be a really cool product to make Bible covers and do engravings on them and stuff. And so I got home from my mission, and then I was working for my buddy's dad, doing GPS cables, soldering them and stuff.
Yeah.
And I hated it. But above us in the building that we were at, there was it was actually really interesting. It was a company that was making covers for iPads, because iPads had just come out and they were big at the time. You wouldn't know this, but I'm just kidding. They just come out, they were big, and so they were doing these covers, and they were sewing them and all this stuff. And the guy that was sewing them was from Argentina, and I speak Spanish and he spoke Spanish, so we'd always talk. And then I was telling him about this idea that I had, and he's like, well, let me teach you how to do leather working and all this stuff. And so he started teaching me, so I learned how to do leather book covers. So I started making them by hand myself and doing them out of my parents' basement, and just trying to learn it and understand it. And then I was like, I'm not an artist, so there's no way that I'm going to be able to draw these pictures myself. So I started looking online on how to take images and make them into like laser engraved graphics. Right. And then I found a lady that had a laser engraver. She started doing them for me. And then I was, at this point, I still hadn't even had a single sell. It was like R&D. I was just trying to figure it out, make some for family, have fun with it. And then once I got a process down and I had a material that I liked, because there's so many different types of leathers and all of them engraved differently.
Yeah.
So as soon as I found what I liked, then I was like, okay, now I'm going to put together a portfolio. I'm going to learn the photography. I'm going to buy all the equipment. And then I went to a college, BYU University, to try and sell them to the BYU bookstore. And that was my first real sell. I sold 40 of them to them at like $50 a pop. And so it was awesome.
How'd that feel?
It felt amazing. I remember I still I don't know, I've said this before, but it's like when you fall in love, it's like I can still remember the day that I realized that I loved my wife. It is so vivid. I can't, there's parts of my life that I don't remember, that I won't remember, that I'm just like, that really happened to me, or this went on, and it feels like a dream,
Yeah.
But I remember that, when I fell in love with my wife, and that'll never leave me. And then the other thing is I remember my first sell. That is just as vivid to me. I still remember the lady that I was talking to. I remember the smell. I remember walking down the stairs. I remember, I don't know, it was so funny. If I showed you guys pictures, I was dressed up in a suit. I was all professional looking. I still remember, and the nerves that I had that day and how I felt. But then I remember leaving and getting that sell, just the feeling of it, I was hooked.
Yeah.
I had to sell, and I had to keep selling and doing my own business.
Yeah. I don't think you're alone in that, though. When we've talked to other sellers, I think that's a common experience. They get their first sell, and it's kind of an addictive feeling. They want to make more sells. And
yeah, it's amazing. I could go on about my first sell all day long. It was so important for my growth. And this was actually right before I had, I'm sorry, I'm kind of throwing the storyline out of whack here, but this was before I'd gotten married. I was in the Army, and I was doing that on the weekends, and then I was working full-time for Rocky Mountain Cable, is what it was called. And I started doing this on the side, and my wife actually, a couple of our dates, she was upstairs helping me make leather book covers for the BYU bookstore. So she got into the relationship knowing that she was marrying somebody that was in love with business.
Well, that's good. Entrepreneurship. It's probably a good standard to set then. So after you had done this book cover business, eventually you kind of morphed into just a laser engraving in general. Would you tell me kind of what that journey was like?
So I started that leather cover business, and then I got married, and it kind of we moved to a small little apartment. It was like a 500 square foot apartment, so I just didn't have the space to do it as much. But I still was kind of sourcing the material, and then I was still doing sales with the BYU bookstore, but not a huge volume. I thought I was going to be a millionaire, right? And it didn't happen. Can you believe that? It didn't happen.
BYU did not make you a millionaire.
I know, and so it kind of started to die off a little bit, and then I was like, yeah, it's just not going to happen. And then my unit in the Army was supposed to deploy, and so we started gearing up for deployment. And I was like, okay, well, since I'm going to deploy, me and my wife decided it would be best for her to move in with my parents. So we're like, okay, well, you'll move in with them while I go on deployment for the next year. And then when I get back from deployment, she was also pregnant at the time, so we were going to have a baby. So we're like, this will just be better because then we can save money while I'm on deployment. We can get back, we can buy a house, all this stuff. And so we geared up for all that. And then my unit didn't end up deploying. And so then we were at my parents'. And while I was there, we were there for a little over a year. While we were there, I got a call from a lady, and she's just like, I love these covers. Can I get some more? And it kind of sparked my interest again. It was just oh my goodness, like, yeah, now I've got more space at my parents'
Right,
house,
yeah.
but we are getting ready for a house, like, you know, like all this stuff. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should buy a laser engraver instead of going out and sourcing it from somebody else. I'll buy my own laser engraver. I'll put it in my dad's garage for now. He'll hate my guts. I'm just kidding. If you're listening, Dad, I know you don't hate my guts. You're always supportive, and I appreciate you. But so I was like, okay, so we'll do that. So I talked to my wife, and we figured it out. We're like, yeah, it's going to cost us, I think it was like $20,000 for the laser engraver. It's kind of
A little bit of money.
kind of weird, right? It's like, here, we're saving up for a house and living in my parents' basement. Let's buy a $20,000 piece of equipment. Like, who does that? Like, what's going? I don't know. Sometimes I look at myself and my past. I go, what was I thinking? But so we did that. We bought the laser. I thought that it was going to show up, come out of the box, and I could just start laser engraving stuff, and everything was going to be amazing. And then I realized very quickly that it was just like learning how to, you know, do leather work. I had to learn a lot. It took me months and lots of equipment, lots of time. I had to buy more equipment, all that stuff. But long story short, there we ended up moving out of my parents. We bought a house in the middle of nowhere, Tooele, Utah. Thule. If you look it up online, it's spelled Thule.
Yeah.
But we moved out there, we bought a house, and back when houses weren't so expensive, like, it's crazy, but I can go on that all day. But so we moved out there, we put it in the garage, and then I was working full-time for another company as a quality auditor, doing manufacturing for medical devices. And then I was coming home and I was doing laser engraving at night because now I had all of this equipment and everything that I had invested into it. And I feel very blessed that I did that. Like, sometimes I look back and go, man, I wish I would have done something different or not. But I also feel very blessed because I forced myself to keep going with my business.
Right.
Because I had so much invested in it that it was like I have no other option. I've
Right.
got to make this work, you know. And it was, you know, it was great. That's kind of where that went, and we slowly started having more kids. I don't know, we can talk about that in a minute, but
Yeah.
yeah, and then that business slowly morphed into where I was doing it at night, and I was trying to grow it, and I was doing stuff on Etsy, and it's just wherever I could sell, you know, Facebook, you know, I was doing all that kind of stuff, and then I met some good friends of mine, my old partners, my old business partners. I met them through their daughter who lived in our neighborhood, and they had a laser engraving company that they had been doing for a long time as well, and they had been doing stuff with national parks and more wholesale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we decided that, you know what, I'll quit my job, I'll do this full time, and I'll move up to Logan from Tooele, and I'll run their shop.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and you know, I took part ownership in that business at the time, and we grew that business and kept doing designs for national parks and growing all that side of things. And
Yeah.
that's what brought me up here to Logan.
I didn't know that.
Was moving my business up here and becoming part of the other laser engraving shop.
Yeah.
And so then we grew that shop out, got more lasers, grew it, did all that stuff, and then I met John and hired him to do marketing for me on the Etsy side of things, and then I decided to give my ownership back in laser engraving. So those of you that are thinking of print on demand, I gave up my laser engraving company so I could do print on demand because I just feel so strongly about what Quadra can do for people and what this platform can do for those that are looking to start a business. You don't have to invest $40,000-$50,000 like I did after everything was said and done on my own shop, plus hundreds of thousands on all the other stuff as I grew it. You don't have to do it that way. You can start today and not have to invest hardly anything.
Yeah.
You know?
So when you started your laser engraving shop way back when, was your intent ever to become a full-time seller, or were you just looking maybe at a hobby or a part-time gig?
My mindset has always been that I'm going to make $1 billion with whatever business I start. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of how I've always been. When I first discovered leatherworking and doing leather book covers, I'm like, if I make this many leather covers and then I figure out the machinery and I get stamps made and all this stuff, I can start producing this much volume. And once I produce that much volume, I can, because I'm a manufacturer. I've always, even in before I started my business professionally, I was doing, you know, auditing and manufacturing for medical device stuff. So I've always looked at big volume, and I've always been like, if they can do it, why can't I do that? You know?
Well, I think it's a good mentality, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So what would you say was the best thing that you did for your business when you were in the laser engraving business, and what would you say your biggest regret, or maybe not even a regret, but what would you go back and change if you could?
So the thing that I love the most about the business of laser engraving, diversifying myself. So as I started my business, I didn't just put everything into one pot. Well, when I started, I did. And that's what I'd say is one of my biggest regrets, is that I put everything into one pot, and it was like my way or the highway type of thinking, right? It's like like that mindset of, I'm going to make $1 billion with this business. Yeah. It's a great mindset, but it's also one of those things where you take on a lot of responsibility and you don't treat people the way that you necessarily should. I guess I didn't. I'm not saying that for anybody else, but for me, it was like, me and my wife struggled at first when I was doing my business, because she'd be like, well, maybe you should do something like this. I'd be like, that's dumb. This is what I'm going to do, right? I'd be like, what you're talking about doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to do it my way. And, you know, I still struggle with that at times, right? It's always trying to get better and be better. And for me, having that mind shift of taking other people's ideas, taking other people's advice, really grew my business, because I was able to take their knowledge and expound on that. Right. Rather than just trying to reinvent the wheel when it doesn't need to be reinvented. Right. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes most people do in their businesses, is they think, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it, but I don't need their advice. I'm going to do it off of my own merit. And at the end of the day, we're all growing here, and there's those that have come before us that have already done what we're doing in whatever business we're doing. And it's great to take that advice and learn from it and bring a mentor into your life. Yeah. So
absolutely. So what did owning your laser engraving shop teach you that you still use as a Quadra leader today?
I would say becoming a team player, becoming service-oriented. One thing that I loved about doing the laser engraving shop was every day I'd come in and turn on the lights, right? And then my employees would show up, and we'd turn on the lasers, and we'd start inventing, we'd start coming up with ideas, and it was just a great place to work, and I had control, right? I had control of my environment. I had control of the fact that I could help other people, that I could be a part of other people's lives, and that I was making a difference in the world. Yeah. I mean, it sounds really dumb. Like, here I am making little Junior Ranger badges and laser engraving them. Like, how does that really change the world, right? But for the 5 people that were in my company, right, like, we did a lot of volume for 5 people, right? But for us 5 people, we were not only providing for our families, but we were doing something that we really enjoyed and something that we really loved. Yeah. And we could pass that creativity on to other people, you know? Like, for me, life has always been about, am I a consumer? Which it's true. Every single one of us consume, right? Right. We consume content. You're consuming this podcast. We consume food. We consume Amazon shipments, whatever, right? But for me as well, it's, am I just consuming, or am I also creating? Right. And I think that's what I love the most about entrepreneurship, is how do I create? How do I add? Not how do I subtract from? How do I add to? How do I make things better? How do I make things different? Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit later, but I feel like that mindset, that how can I add and how can I make things different, is a big reason why you're so passionate about Quadra. So kind of tell me, after you met John, what your journey was like to get into Quadra. Yeah, so John started doing marketing for me, and we started, I started learning the print-on-demand side of e-commerce, and we just started selling like crazy. I think Scott's got some images, so we'll throw some up, but we were like, they almost killed me that first Mother's Day that we were doing it together, because I was the one that was producing all the product, and we started doing so many signs and so many ornaments that I had to hire my mom for a week. So she took off work from her own job, came up and worked for me for a week. I even hired John's daughters to come do sanding for me. I had a whole sanding station. Yeah. I bought like a huge Merca sander and all this stuff, because we were just producing so much, so fast. That Mother's Day, that very first Mother's Day when I met John, that it literally almost killed me. And I was doing all the inputs for all the personalization. I was doing all of the design work. I was doing a lot. And so I was just like, this is awesome, but I can see the flip side of things. where maybe I'm not producing, maybe where I'm the one that's connecting to the manufacturer. That's
Right.
what I think is so cool about it. It's because there's other people that have already scaled their manufacturing to allow for you to be able to sell their products.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so that's kind of where the thing flipped for me was like, I can keep producing,
Right.
and I can keep growing more equipment and have more overhead, and just keep growing this business and keep producing as, you know, people sell more product. Or I can do the flip side, and I can be the person selling the product and piggyback off of somebody else that can
Right.
produce high volume.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the flip went for me, where I was like, I want to do the actual POD side of it, where I can actually do the selling. You know, it was cool.
Yeah, really, really cool. So now that we know a little bit about your background, especially your background in laser engraving and manufacturing, how would you say that your background in manufacturing makes you a unique asset to Quadra? What makes
Yeah.
us different?
So I actually think the team here at Quadra, like, we are pretty unique in the sense that the ownership of Quadra, we all have different,
Yeah.
you know, skill sets, and I think we all complement each other very well, because, you know, you've got John that does the marketing, and then Scott. I don't know if you're ever going to interview Scott. Hopefully,
We'll see if we can get
that'd
him
be
on
cool.
here.
Yeah, we'll talk to him and see if we can get him to sit down and talk. But Scott's the development side, so he knows all the technology, you know. And then for me, I've done high-end manufacturing, high-volume manufacturing. I've done it for years. And so for me, I look at it and I say, I can see the selling side of it, you know, not just the marketing side, but the selling side. And then I can also look at it and say, what does a seller want out of a manufacturer?
Right.
And that's our long-term goal here at Quadra, right, is how do we make manufacturing accessible to everybody? And how do we, I mean, John uses this terminology a lot, but how do we decentralize manufacturing
Yeah.
to where it's not just, you know, just not just the big manufacturers that are making all the money or things like that, but as a whole, how do we as a whole demand better prices from manufacturers, and how do we get access to more unique products? So
Right.
what I mainly do here at Quadra, aside from accounting and bookkeeping and stuff like that, I do a lot of, and I wouldn't even say I do bookkeeping, I mainly just do numbers. I'm a number guy.
Yeah.
But I would say my main goal here at Quadra is to find better manufacturers, find better products, get more products on. I work a lot with Scott on doing the technology, where we go back and forth and say, what integrations are we needing,
Yeah.
support-wise, to help bring on more manufacturers, to bring on more products, and how can we do that quicker, faster, and better?
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that your background has perfectly equipped you to do that job well.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
it's really, really cool. So now that you kind of told us what you do at Quadra, what's coming up with Quadra that you're really excited about?
Okay, so we've been talking a lot in our groups about this new the new shipping profiles that we're doing.
Yeah.
Where we're going to be having automated shipping profiles. When you create a product, you're going to automatically get the shipping profiles laid out, and it's also going to be doing zonal shipping as well. So if the manufacturer offers zonal shipping over flat rate shipping, so flat rate is like no matter where it goes in the U.S., it's going to be this price.
Yeah.
Zonal shipping is like if the manufacturer's in Colorado, it's distance from the manufacturer to the delivery point.
Right.
So instead of you having to pay a flat rate for it to go from Colorado to Colorado, you're going to pay for Zone 1. So you're going to save more money on shipping. And so we've been really heavily, it's been a lot of work, but I've been working a lot with Scott and his team on getting this set up right so that we can start adding this, so we can help bring more margins back to all of our sellers on Quadra. And to me, that's kind of like just close to me, because it's super important to be able to get the margins back for everybody that's selling. And I really take that as like a personal like goal of mine. I don't even know how to say it right, but it's super important to me to make sure that our sellers are getting the best prices possible.
Yeah.
And that it's helping them get the margin back so that they can grow their business. Because for us, you know, if you as a seller can grow your business, you're going to help grow Quadra as well. And it becomes a platform for the users,
Yeah, absolutely.
not for the platform itself. You know?
Right. Yeah, that's very, very exciting update that's coming soon. All right, again. What would you say is the most fulfilling thing about working at Quadra?
For me, it's that we're mission-oriented. Like, we get up every day, and the first thing that goes through my mind is, how can I make Quadra better for the users? That's That's like my driving factor here. Every day I get up and I'm mission oriented for the users that are using Quadra. How can I get more products and make them more accessible for our users, and how can I help get the best prices possible for them?
Yeah.
And how can we make our data, our app, how can we make everything in there more user friendly for our users as well? That's all that's going through my mind all day long. So I have, like, if you went through my to-do list of things that I have down for future to-dos that I can't even touch yet, I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of ideas that have come through my mind of things that we can do to improve the app, and that we will be laying out to improve the app as we grow it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a spur-of-the-moment question, so we'll see if you have an answer. But do you have a story of a time that, like, your biggest success with Quadra?
Like, what do you mean by, like
like
success?
just the moment you were most, like, something you were really excited about, or something that you'd worked really hard on for Quadra that happened?
I would say, for me, like, all the little wins of, like, updating things or getting things in the app are great. But what really stands out to me is when our users, like, so for instance, for Christmas last year, 2020 Q4, to see a lot of our users that had never sold before and to see the volume that they were able to do and be like, oh my goodness, like, what a great tool that not only were we able to help somebody understand how to run a business, but we provided a service that allowed our sellers to make money.
Yeah.
We were looking at a stat the other day, and I don't know if John will be happy that I state this. He probably will. He'll be fine with it. But we were going through our numbers at Quadra to see, because another thing that's super important for me is I want to make sure that we're growing a platform that's helping people, not taking away from them. I don't want anybody that's joining Quadra to jump in and realize that this just took money from me, and I never got anything out of it. Like, I did the work that was asked of me.
Yeah.
I did the trainings. I started to grow my business, and nothing ever came from it. I don't want that to happen. But this number is super important to me because I just want to see it get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So for every $1 that Quadra made, our users made $5. So that shows that for the margins, right? For every dollar that was, and in that dollar was also payments for manufacturing and everything else.
Yeah.
So for the cost for manufacturing was $1.
Yeah.
Our users made $5. And to me, that shows that our users are able to sell, they're able to have margin, and they're able to grow a profitable business.
Yeah.
And that number is just going to get higher and higher as our users can sell more and more and more and grow their businesses. And so to me, I go, we made something, and we're making something that helps our users be able to actually grow a business. It's not taking away from their businesses, you know?
Yeah.
So powerful to me. When I saw that number, I almost, like, I'm not an emotional person, but I almost started crying. I was like, that is so freaking cool to me to see that our users are actually able to use this and make money at it.
Yeah.
It works.
It does. And I'm glad you shared that stat, because I think it really shows that Quadra customers and sellers, I guess is a better word for it, are the center of everything that we do at Quadra, trying to make that a better experience. So, speaking of sellers, what advice would you give to a new seller if they were just getting started?
I'm going to sound so cheesy here, but if you're really thinking about getting into print on demand and growing, like, I don't think there's a better tool that's got the same bang for your buck as Quadra Pro. I've talked to many friends and family members that have jumped into training courses and things like that have cost them $30,000, right?
Yeah.
And like all this money to start a business, and then nothing came from it. One of our goals here at Quadra is not to break the bank with trainings and with learning and growing. And if you're really serious about growing a business, I go back to what I said earlier. If you're really serious about growing your business, you should be serious about getting a mentor. You should be serious about getting in a peer group that doesn't think you're crazy, that does believe in you. Yeah. And that understands what you're going through. And for me, Quadra Pro is that. And I sound like I'm trying to sell Quadra Pro here. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I don't care. But at the end of the day, and John's going to make fun of me for saying that too, but I always say at the end of the day, for me, Quadra Pro is one of the best trainings that you can jump into. You're in a peer group, you've got live trainings, you're working as a team, you're growing it, you know. And so go check out our free Mastermind class on it. Like, if you really are serious about growing a print-on-demand business, we have a free Mastermind that goes over what Quadra Pro is and goes over the basics of print-on-demand and how to start. Yeah. And super I don't know, we've spent so much time on building out the content and training on it and teaching people how to start businesses. And I think the results speak for themselves.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of our users, I would say, like, if you look at somebody who's just kind of dabbling in it, just trying it out, compared to somebody that's actually gone with Quadra Pro, it's a night and day difference on the volume that they've been able to bring into their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will put a link at the bottom in the description to the master class. It's really awesome, and Brian and John are there, and they just go over the strategies that they use to build their print-on-demand business up to $5 million in under 18 months.
Yeah.
And it's all free, so it's a fantastic resource, especially if after listening to this podcast you're interested in learning more about print-on-demand or online selling in general.
And I like what me and John bring to the table, because he comes from more of like a marketer side of things, and I come from a manufacturing side of things for like making and building products and selling them. And so we kind of have fun together, getting into it, talking about it and going over our different likes and dislikes and stuff. And if you're thinking about doing print on demand and you already sell products, like, this is why I think Quadra is so great too, is that we don't just tell you just do print on demand. We don't tell you just sell products from somebody else, but we even have trainings where we talk about doing your own manufacturing, doing your own business, starting your own
drop
things
shipping,
like that, drop shipping, and a whole bunch of different other things as well, like how to source materials like NFL signs, or like hopefully I can't get in trouble for that, but like sourcing like different types of materials that are totally legal, like finding manufacturers that already have sports teams on them that are totally legal, and then they're licensed, they're ready to sell. Making your own products. We go into a lot of different aspects of e-commerce that I don't think is out there. We look at a lot of different variables of what you can be doing and thinking outside the box to grow your business. So
yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, if you guys are interested, please take a look at our masterclass. It's really worth your time. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you, Brian. I appreciate you coming to let me interview you. Kind of a different experience, but we'll be back next week with another podcast, so keep your eye out for it.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later. See ya.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, could you do me a huge favor and like this video? Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got tons of great content there. And if you want to connect with us on social media, check out the links in the description, and we look forward to seeing you there.